So this weekend marks the coronation of the 9th Amazulu King Misuzulu Ka Zwelithini. The event takes place at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban. Now it follows the ukengana, esibayeni ceremony, which took place last month, which is described as one of the most sacred royal customs in Zulu tradition. In every Zulu homestead, there is a kraal, which is regarded as a sacred place where the family communicates with its ancestors. And there the king was introduced to the royal ancestors and the nation's ancestors as the next Amazulu King, following the passing of his father, King Goodwill Zwelithini, kaBhekuzulu, and mother, Queen Regent, Mantfombi Dlamini-Zulu. Well, Dr. Bongani Ngqulunga is an academic, public sector administrator, author, and the Deputy Director of JIAS, and joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us. And it's wonderful to be in conversation with you again. So the last event of this nature was 51 years ago. Yes. I mean, 1971, that's when King Goodwill Zwelithini was installed as the ruler of the Zulu nation during apartheid. What's the historical significance of this moment, both during that time and now?
I mean, thank you very much, Iman. I mean, as you have said, 51 years ago, I mean, so it is quite a historic moment. But we should even go back. I mean, after the defeat of the Zulu Kingdom in 1879, I mean, successive Zulu kings tried to be recognized by the government, and it didn't happen. For almost a century, they tried, but it didn't work. And so to have a South African president go and give a certificate, it's quite unbelievable. I mean, it just shows both the durability of the Zulu Kingdom to start with, and in this time around we have a young guy. It's just unbelievable.
I was looking at the video, and in the meantime I have my bottle of water. It's unsealed, yes, so that you can settle your throat. But I was looking at the video of that time, and it was such a young king, and there was so much expectation. You know, as you're saying, there's such a difference between that moment and now. For those who are unfamiliar with these proceedings, how are things likely to unfold?
Well, I mean, there's something about the event tomorrow. I mean, is the president just, in a sense, giving a certificate, I mean, to the king? But there is a lot more to it. I mean, firstly, it is a public recognition of King Misuzulu Ka Zwelithini as the king of the Zulus. And I think it is significant given what has happened. You know, the contestation, his brothers claiming the throne. So I think there is a symbolic moment there which is quite significant itself.
Look, we'll come back to Simakade and what happened even during the entering of the kraal ceremony and some of the politics around this particular coronation. But I want to think about tomorrow.
Yeah.
More than 48,000 people are expected to attend the ceremony. How important is the witnessing of this moment to the Zulu nation? I
think it is a moment that most people, like you and me, who are witnessing it. I mean, if you think about it, that it was 51 years ago, just to be there. I mean, for those who were there, in 1971, there were about 20,000 people. We're expecting about 48,000, 50,000 people to be there to witness it. I mean, so it would be a defining moment, I mean, for most of those who will be there. But I also think it would be a defining moment for those people who are Zulu and for South Africa as a whole. Because in many respects, I mean, there are people who have never witnessed anything like this. But we'll also see a cultural diversity, because even though it is people who consider themselves Zulu will be there, but there will be everybody there at the coronation or the handing over of the certificate to the king by the president.
And we'll talk about those dignitaries and heads of state expected. I think what was interesting in listening to the preparation and the conversations around this is people are encouraged to put on their finest, yes, to come out as if they themselves, you know, are at an incredibly important event in their own lives. And some would argue that this is a very important event, especially in the life of, you know, the Zulu nation and the Zulu Kingdom. The dignitaries expected to attend the event include Eswatini King Mswati III, former Botswana President Ian Khama, kings from across the African continent and religious leaders. How does this fit in with coronations of a similar kind
Yeah.
across the continent?
I mean, it is interesting that, for instance, King Misuzulu III, I mean, is coming because there is a familial relationship. I mean, he is the uncle to King Misuzulu. And I think, I mean, looking back at Zulu history, I don't think we have had anything similar. I mean, you recall when he participated in that ritual, when he was getting into the kraal, there were some of the kings who came as far as Malawi, who came to witness it. I mean, so, I mean, the Zulu Kingdom and the Zulu royal house has always been a symbol, really, of royalty, not only in South Africa, but also for other kingdoms. And in a sense, they are coming to learn, but also to witness. I mean, this is one of the greatest kingdoms that we have in the African continent. And so to see something like this, and their presence, I mean, in a sense, they are showing that we are there and we identify with what is going on.
You know, King Misuzulu Ka Zwelithini was announced as heir to the throne following the passing of the king. Where does this leave the family, particularly around the division over the legitimacy of the king? You have Prince Simakade Ka Zwelithini, who also performed his own entering of the kraal ceremony, and who considers himself to be the rightful heir of the throne.
Well, I think there is a legal question and a political question. I mean, I think what is going to happen tomorrow with the ceremony that we'll witness, I think it will make it difficult for other claimants to claim the throne in the political sense. They still have legal avenues if they want to use those legal avenues. But I do think that actually it is one of the immediate responsibilities of King Misuzulu to try to unite the family. And we should say it is not for the first time, I mean, that when there is succession, that the family fights. I mean, and it takes time, I mean, for those rifts to heal. And I do suspect that over a period of perhaps a few years to come, you will see the family coming together, and especially if the king take a step, and he has already said that they should come back home. And I do think that once it settles for most of them that he is actually the king. I mean, to see the president handing him the certificate tomorrow, I think for most of them they will know that it will be difficult to become king, and they will start rallying behind him. It might take time, but I think it will happen as it has happened in the past.
So we've mentioned the certificate a few times. Just tell us what's in it.
Well, I mean, it's basically what the law says. I mean, is that the president should hand over a certificate of recognition where he says you are hereby recognized as the king of the Zulu nation. I mean, in a sense, it is a piece of paper, but there is a lot more to it. I mean, because as we have said, there is history here. I mean, the Zulu Kingdom was formed by Shaka over 200 years ago. So King Misuzulu is sitting on King Shaka's throne. I mean, that is not a small thing. I mean, as I have said, his grandfather, not too long ago, was trying to be recognized as a king by the government, and the government refused, the apartheid government. And so the King Misuzulu, the president of a democratic South Africa, is coming to hand him over the certificate. It is incredibly historic, and I think you will see that in the ceremony, that we'll see tomorrow, in the number of people who are going to be there, in the dignitaries that are going to be there. I think it is something that we are not going to forget about for a long time to come.
You know, when you explain it like that, it gives it more weight.
Yeah.
And there's a keen emotion attached to it in terms of recognition, legitimacy, and restoring the gravitas. I want to ask you, though, in modernity, what is the place for a monarchy?
You know, I've thought about that. I mean, I think, he's, in a sense, he's the right king for the right time. I mean, think about him. I mean, he is the guy who went to some of the best private schools in South Africa. He went to the United States of America to study there. And I think you recognize that South Africa is a fast-changing society. We have young people, perhaps, who do not identify even with these traditional institutions. So I think the king has a challenge, in a sense, to make the Zulu royalty more relevant to young people, I mean, so that they can identify with it. But I mean, if you think about it, I cannot think of a king who's more prepared for that challenge more than this king that will be recognized by the government tomorrow.
What a fascinating interview, Bongani, and I wish we had time to talk a little bit more, because there are other themes around how the rest of South Africa who do not belong to the kingdom, who do not identify, can find their place and their ownership inside this moment in terms of nation building. But thank you as always for your lovely analysis. Appreciate you.
Thank you
Dr. Bongani Ngqulunga, who is the Deputy Director of the Johannesburg Institute for Advanced Study.